So we're going to try to understand Chavav, but in order to understand Chavav, we have to start on Chav Dalet Amud Beis, and then go on to Chav Hey Amud Aleph, and then to Chav Hey Amud Beis, and then finally to Chavav. So we'll have to jump around a little bit. So if you take a look at the last line on Chav Dalet Amud Beis, that's where we want to start. And this is based on a sugya Masechet Me'ilah. And this is the part of Nazir that's Kodshim. And it says, Mace, v'hoyulo mos stumin yiplu linidava. You have such a thing? Just go like
got
this.
It. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm good. Sorry. With mute.
Okay, then. So what happened was that the Nazir, at this particular point, had set aside mos for his karbonos. But unfortunately, he died before he could bring his karbonos. And we're going to take a look now on Chav Hey Amud Aleph, and we'll see that the Gemara is assuming now that he could be makriv from all his mos, olas nedava. So the mos, shall I say, have no specific designation because they were mos stumin. Stumin means he hadn't designated, which mos would be to buy which karbonos. And therefore, Yiplu Linidava means that these mos will go to a certain specific, like kupa, a place in the Beis Hamikdash where they would use it for karbonos nidava. And the Gemara asks the following question: how can you use all these mos for an olas nidava v'alo dmei chatos mo'ravim bahem? One of the karbonos that a Nazir is obligated to bring with the completion of his Nazirus is a karbon chatos. So it's quite definite that when he was mafresh these mos, he had in mind to bring all of his karbonos, including a karbon chatos. Now we have a rule with regard to, right, we have four categories of karbonos. Two lend themselves to an adava, that's called shlomim and ola, and two do not lend themselves to nidava, and that's chatos and asham. So the most stumin that have within them a certain designation for chatos could not possibly be redirected. Let's see if I can get a better word than that. Recalculated. You remember that? Recalculated for a carbon adava. So how do we understand this? Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha, which means halacha Moshe Sinai, he bin Nazir. That we have halacha Moshe Sinai, that if you have mos stumin of Nazirus, you're allowed to bring an ola from those mos, even though there's a mixture of chatos within it. Now, I have a note here, which is a summary of Tosfos, and he says that if, let's say, for example, and that's Gemara that we're going to learn today on Daf Chavav, if he had designated specific mos for chatos, then if he died, you cannot use those mos for carbon olas nedava. The halacha Moshe Sinai only applies when the dmei chatos are mixed in with all these mos, and we don't know which mos are designated for a chatos. If the dmei chatos are not mixed in with the other mos, then, as we'll soon see, when he says Ha'omer mos elu l'chatosi, while he was alive, he pointed to these mos, and he said, these mos are for chatos, and the rest of the mos are going to be used for the other karbanos. Then in such a case, we're going to have to take those damim that were designated for chatos and what we call yolicham liyam melech. We have to throw them out. And with the balance of the mos, we will buy half of them for an olah, half of them for shlomim. Now, in order to start learning Chavav, which is our agenda for today, we have to look at Omar Mar, the last two lines on Daf Chav Heyam and Beis. And the Gemara at this point is going back to the Halach L'Moshe Misinai that was mentioned by Rabbi Yochanan on Chav Heyam and Aleph. Omar Mar, Halacha Hi Ben Nazir. There's a special halacha l'Moshe Misinai with regard to the mos of a Nazir, in contrast to other kinds of, shall we say, mixtures. So the Gemara immediately raises the question, the objection, Vasu lo, are there no other cases in which mos should be designated for nedava, even though within the mixture there are dmei chatos? For Asanya we have a brisa, Usha'ar chayove kinim shebatorah, which means the following. We have a concept in Kodshim which is called a korban olah v'yored. And what does that mean? If he's wealthy enough financially, then he has to bring behemos. And he's going to use money, a large sum of money, to buy animals for a chatos and animals for an olah. Now, if on the other hand he's an ani and he cannot afford to buy behemos, then he buys ophos. And that's either shtei torim or shnei b'nei yonah, one for an olah and one for a chatos. Now, these cases of korban olah v'yored, as far as I remember, apply to only two cases, a yoledes and a mitzorah. So what happens with the case of mitzorah? Mitzorah has to bring 3 different karbanos, and they're all from little lambs. One is for an osham, the other is for an olah, and the third is for a chatos. However, if he's an ani, the Torah in Vayikra Perek Yudal, it allows him to bring just the minimum. That's a keves li osham, and he'll bring shtei torim, or alternatively shnei b'nei yonah, la'olah u'lechatos. And the Torah in Vayikra Yud Beis addresses the case of Yoledes. She has to bring a keves li olah. And if she's a poor woman, then instead of bringing a keves li olah, she could bring a ben yonah or a tar. And that's called the korban olah v'yored. Now, it seems that other Rishonim extend the principle of olah v'yored to other cases, like, for example, a zav and a zava. However, it says, hazav hazav yoles mitzorah kol chai v'kitin shabbat Torah. So it could be that when it says kol chai v'kinim, that's a brisa, then it might refer to zav and zava. Okay, but let's go with the definite. The definite is going to be the 2 cases of mitzorah and yoledes. And now we turn to Daf Chavav. Shefrishu mos l'kineim. So in these cases of a mitzorah and yoledes, they were aniyim, they were poor people, and they designated funds for a pair of birds. Now, again, if we're talking about a pair of 2 birds, then we're talking about a tzoras, a mitzorah. So he or she designated these monies, harei elu litzarasi. Now what happens? They got wealthy. Now, once they get wealthy, they are now chayav to bring a korban osher, which is a behemah lechatos and a behemah leolah. They cannot fulfill their obligation with tzipor, with birds, with ophos. So what do we do with this mos, this bag of coins that was designated for kinei tzipor when they were aniyah? Irotza lahavi bahem, if they want to designate all of these mos for a chatas behema yavi, olas behema yavi. In other words, since when they, let's say these mitzoroim, designated this money for their korbanos, they made a general designation. They did not specify that certain of those mos were for a chatos and certain of the mos were for an olah. So therefore, it says here in this brisa, and this is what the Gemara is quoting here, that the mitzorah has a choice. He can use the money for a chatos, or alternatively for an olas behema. In other words, as we said before, he didn't designate which would be for a chatos, which would be an olah. So the most really include both a chatos and an olah. So he could choose which he wants to bring, either a chatos or an olah. Base, if the person who was mafresh these mos for a korban ashir, and then he became wealthy, died, he didn't designate which monies would be for a chatos, which for an olah. If he's alive, he could choose one of the two. But now he's gone. So what do we do with these mos stumin? Yiplu in a davam. We're going to be makriv, what we call an olas in the davar shel tzibur, even though there are dmei chatos mixed up in this whole mixture. And that's against Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said that in the case of Nazir, when there was mos for a chatos mixed in, then we have a special halacha l'moshe misinai that allows us to designate, or how do we call it, recalculate this money for a korban olah, olas nedav v'tzibur. Well, we don't need a halacha l'moshe misinai. This is not a separate halacha in Nazir. This is a general halacha. In any case of mos stumin, as we saw by the mitzorah. So the Gemara answers, Tanan Nazir v'chayve kinim d'damule. When Rabbi Yochanan said the words halacha ben Nazir, that all the mos could be designated and will be designated for nedava, even though there's a mixture inside of Tamei Chatos, he had in mind not just a Nazir, but all chayve kinim, meaning mixtures of birds, shedomim le-Nazir. They are very similar to a Nazir. So Nazir is just an archetype. It's only a category. And just like in the case of a Nazir, he brings two karbanos for one thing. In other words, shnei karbanos al davar echad. So and even though this Tmei Chatos Murav, he could use it for, and it will be designated for an Olas Nedava. So too, in other cases of Chayve Kinim, where there are two Karbanos for one thing, for one Machayev, then even though the Tmei Chatos mixed in, nevertheless he could use the money for an Olas Nedava. So Rabbi Yochanan, when he invoked the principle of Halacha Moshe Misina ben Nazir, he didn't mean Nazir specifically to the exclusion of anything else. So it wasn't an exclusive designation of Nazir, but he meant anything that's similar to Nazir is included. So now the Gemara wants to say, well, wait a second. Rabbi Yochanan used the language, halacha hi ben Nazir. So he must be excluding something. Okay, you're telling me he's not excluding chayve kinim in the case of a korban olah v'yored, but what is he excluding? So the Gemara says, lafuke mihadasanya. He's coming to exclude the following scenario that was recorded in a brisa. Misha haya mechuyev chatos. So we're talking about a person who violated an avera b'shogeg, which had he violated b'meisedi b'chayv kares, and then he took a neder v'yomer and he declared harei olai olah, that in addition to the korban chatos, he obligates himself to bring an additional carbon olas nedava, and then hifrish mos. He designated mos for both of these karbanos, meaning for the chatos that he's chayvin because of the aver b'shogeg, and for the olas nedava, and they're all mixed together. The Amar, and he declared harei elu lechovasi. What does it mean harei elu lechovasi? That these mos are for my entire chova, both for chatas and for olah. And once again, we're going to go through the dinim of what if he's alive, what if he's dead. If he's alive, Ratzal Havi ben Chatas Behema. If he wants to use these mos to purchase the chatos, because again, he's chayv chatos, lo yavi. In other words, since he was mafresh this money for all his chovos, including his olas nedava, he's got to buy with these monies not only a korban chatas, but also korban olah. Olas behem lo yavi. And likewise, if he wants to use all these mos and direct them in a singular way towards olah, he cannot do so, because he was mafresh all these mos for all his chiyuvim, all his karbanos, including korban chatas. Now, would he be able to use all this money and buy two karbanos, two behemos, one for chatas, one for olah? But the answer is he can't do that either, because the mos are mu'uravim, they're all mixed up. There's dmei chatas and dmei olah in this mixture. And he may go ahead and accidentally use the mos that are designated for an olah for a chatos and buy himself a chatos, or vice versa. So therefore, what he's going to have to do is a very fancy trick. He's got to use the mos and buy two behemos, and he should declare kol dmei chatos sheyesh b'mos elu yachulu al behemazu v'chol dmei ha'olah sheyesh b'mos elu yachulu al behemazu. Okay, now this is a challenging statement over here, because he seems to contradict himself. On the one hand, he's saying that when he buys these two behemos, he's saying all the damim of chatas in these monies will be chal on this behema. But he purchased two behemoths. So he's going to now say dmei olah should be chal on the other behema. So I guess what we're saying here is he doesn't know which mos belong to which, and he leaves the tarovos basically as is, as a mixture. And he's going to say that, whatever is dmei chatos within this mixture is for this behema, and whatever is dmei olah in this mixture is for that behema. However, Mace, if he died, so again, here's a person who said, harei elu lechovasi, v'hoylo mos stumin, right? He wasn't mafresh these mos for chatos and these mos for olah. He didn't designate. Is yelchu yam hamelach. In this case, he has to basically destroy the monies by throwing them into the Dead Sea. No one is allowed to get any benefit from it. And the reason for that is because there's a mixture inside here of dmei chatos. This is the case that Rabbi Yochanan came to exclude when he declared halacha he bin Nazir. And here we don't have the possibility that the mos should be used after his death for a nedava. And the reason for that is because here, in this case, the chatos and the olah are coming for two different machayvim. The chatos is for the violation of an Isur Kares, b'shogeg, and the olah is because he took a neder to bring a korban olah. When does the halacha l'moshe v'sinei apply? That's only when there's one machayv, let's say Nazirus, and in order to fulfill his obligation of siyum hanazirus, he has to bring a chatos and an olah, or alternatively, in the case of tzaras, that the mitzvah has to bring these two karbanos, one of which is a korban chatos, at determination of his tzaras. So when he's using all the mos for one machayev, meaning nazirus or tzaras, then the halacha l'moshe Sinai kicks in, and we could designate the monies for a carbon olas nadav. But if on the other hand he has two different machayvim and they're mixed inside, then yelchu the Amamelech, we don't have the halach Moshe Sinai, and we cannot redirect the monies for an olas nadav. Now, in order to continue with Rav Ashi, we're going to need to look at a Mishnah here. I'm just not sure if I have the Mishnah. Just 1 second. Oh, here we have the Mishnah. Baruch Hashem. So this Mishnah is on Chavdal and Omer Aleph. Ha'isha shenadra ben Nazir. So she took upon herself Nazirus, v'frishas behemta, and she designated the karbonos she has to bring b'siyum on Nazirus, v'yakach efer labayla. Now the hafar of a Baal is Chala Mafreya. So she was never a Nazira. So what do we do with this behema that was designated to be brought b'sof Nazirus, like a kiv solachatos or a keves liolo, an ayol shlomim? So the Mishnah establishes im shalo haisa behema, if those animals that she designated for her karbonos of a Nazir were purchased with the monies of her husband, then the behemoths have no kedusha at all, and they're chulin. What do we do with the behemoth? Teitze v'tira bi'ed, which means that we send the animal out together with other behemoths of chulin, and basically the Baal was makneh to his wife his money, but only for that which she needs. But if she doesn't need it, then he's not makneh to her. So the Baal was mefer his wife's nazirus. She doesn't need to bring karbonos, and therefore he wasn't makneh her. So all chad gadya here. And therefore, the hegdesh of these behemoths is not valid because it's not her money to be magdish. In other words, she can't use that money to purchase a behemoth and then go ahead and be magdish it, because if a person is magdish an animal that's not his, the hegdesh is not chal. Omer Rav Ashi, Hadi Amrit, this din that we saw in the Mishnah, that if you have mos stumin, we said that the mos are holchin linadava, but mifurashim lo, if they were specifically designated for a certain carbon, let's say a chatos, he cannot use that money and redirect it for a carbon adava. Lo tema, you don't have to say. The Omar Elu Chatos V'Elu Lo Lasi, when we said that Mefurashim, and they were specifically earmarked for a Chatos or an Ola, then we don't have the possibility. The fallback position of Nidava in the case of Mos Tumin, that doesn't apply, or shall we say, don't assume that applies only to Omar Elu Chatos V'Elu Lo Lasi V'Elu Shlom. When he was mafresh three separate mos, three separate sort of designation of the mos, and with regard to each one of them, he designates one for chatos, one for olav shlomim, and that's the only case in which there's no option, there's no fallback position of mos stumin holchen linadav. No. Says Rav Ashi, that's not so. Elafilu Omar, even if he looks at a bag of mos and he declares Elu chatosi lo yosi l'shlomi, and he says that these mos should bring a korban chatos, a korban ola, korban shlomim. He didn't say Elu v'elu v'elu. He didn't designate them. Mifurashim hein. It's considered as if he was mafresh specifically certain mos for chatos, etc., etc. Now here I want to read a note. He writes the following: Hachiluk beinim hoyu amos mevurorim ezmem lechatos ve'ez liolo l'shlomim o shelo she'im hoyu mevurorim hadiru kamo b'mishnah shedmei chatos yelchu liyam hamelach. If they were specifically designated, earmarked, and some money's for a chatos, then we have to throw out the whole bag of coins. No. My mistake. We don't have to throw out all the coins. What we're going to do is we're going to designate from this mixture the Tmei Chatos, and that will throw it to the Yam HaMelech. However, the Tmei Ola and the Beis Shlomim can be used and redirected as Korbanos Nadav. But let's say that's only if he had most Mevurorim. But if he had one group of mos, which we call Mefurashim B'Tarovis. So not 3 bags of mos, but 1 bag of mos that contains everything, Mu'ravim, then the whole bag has to go to the Yam HaMelech. Now, when do we say that the entire bag could be used and redirected for the Dava? That's only when he says Mos Elichovasi and it was Mos Stumin. So again, I'm trying to summarize the Chiddush here of Rav Ashi. And this is the Lishna Kama of Rav Ashi. Chadi Amrit, when we said that only most Stumin is Holchan and Dov, but for Roshim Lo Tem, don't say it's only the case where he said Elu Chatosi, Elu Losi, etc. But even if he says, not that there were 3 different bags of most, but they were all mixed up in one bag, but he said Elu Chatosi Lo Yosi Shlami, meaning that I designate certain most from this bag for a karmachatos, others for an ola, and third section for shlamim. So that's also mifurashim heim. That's also considered like most mevurorim, even though it's 1 bag of mos, and we don't know which mos are which. So that's called Mefurashim B'Tarovis. And Mos Stumin, which was our discussion of Rabbi Yochanan, the Lochel Moshe Sinai, that's only when he says Mos Elu Chovasi, he doesn't mention Chatos, Ola, or Shlom. Ika Diamri, another version of Rav Ashi, Rav Ashi, Lo Tema, don't think that the halacha Mefurashim is Dafka, Adi Omer Elu Chatosi, Ola, Shlomi, so we have to figure out, according to this second Lishna of Rav Ashi, that even if he says about 1 bag of mos, and he doesn't specify that he's going to bring a chatas and all in a shlamim, even so, it's kimufurashim. We have to throw out the entire bag. They all goes to the Yam HaMelech. But if he says Mos Elu Karbanos Nizirusai, that's called Mos Stumin. And then we apply the Halacha Moshe Messina of Rabbi Yochanan, and all the monies go to the Dava. So the difference between the 2 Lashonos of Rav Ashi is going to be the case where he says Elu Chovasi, as opposed to karbanos nizirosai. Once he says Eilu Chavasi, it's basically he's saying for the various specific chovos of chatas, ol, and shlom. And then we don't have the halacha of Rabbi Yochanan. Omar Rava, Hodam Moran. Ira, I'm going to take just a 1 minute break. Somebody see it?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Omar Rava, Hodi Amoran, Mo Stumin, Yiplu Linidava. Right? If he didn't say which Mos or for which Karman, then we'll apply the principle of Halach L'Moshe Sinai and we'll use the whole bag for a Karban Nedava. He says, Im nofla dmei chatos beineim, harein kimufuroshin. Now, what does this mean? This seems to contradict the whole deal of Rabbi Yochanan, the Halach L'Moshe Sinai. He says the following. Most Stumin, again, he did not designate which Karban, does not apply im nofla dmei chatos mi beineim. Im dmei chatos nifredu mishar hamos. So what would be a case in which in the Mos Stumin, some of the Mos were separated from the rest of the Mos? That's called nifredu. So that's a case called shaloka chelik me'amos v'yomer harei elu chatos. So he took out from the bag, from the mixture, certain Mos, and he designated them as a chatos. Then whatever is left in the bag, harei hein kimufuroshim, it's as if by process of elimination, he has designated the balance for Ola and Shlomim. So now he has a bag in which he has a taroves of Dmei Ola and Dmei Shlomim. So what do we do with that money? We take that money, we split half of it and purchase an Ola. The other half we purchase Shlomim. And we don't need the Halacha Moshe Sinai here. Why? Because the Halacha Moshe Sinai was only Mechadesh in the case where the Dmei Chatos mixed in, and we know that you cannot rededicate Dmei Chatos for a Karban Nedava. Chatos has not been Nedava. So you wouldn't be able to use that money, if not for the Halach L'Moshe Sinai, to purchase a Karban Ola of Nedava. But here, in this particular scenario of Rava, we don't even need the Halach L'Moshe Sinai because he already removed Mos from the bag, designating for a chatos, and the mixture that's left over is the Mei Ol and Shlom, both of which are Bab and Idava. So he could take these monies and use half of them to buy an Ola and half to buy Shlomim. And now we turn to Chavavim and Beis. Tanya Kavase de Rava. The Gemara now brings a support text from a Brisa for Rava. And the Brisa speaks about a Nazir was mafresh his Mos, and on part of them he said Eilu Lechatasi, that I designated these Mos for a karbachatos, Vashar l'shar nezirusai, and the balance of the Mos will be used for whatever karbanas amchayev, namely an Ola and a Shlomim. So in this particular case, he cannot use these Mos exclusively or totally, shall we say, for an Ola or for Shlomim, because he's already designated part of the Mos for Chatos. So that's not called Stam. Correct? The Halacha Moshe Sinai only applied in the case of Mos Stumin, but this is no longer Mos Stumin because he designated it as part of the Mos as Elul Chatos. So what is the din in this case? Tzarech lahavi b'mos elu games ha'ola v'games ha'shlomim. He's going to have to bring both an ola and a korban shlomim. So wait, what's the chiddush of this price? So let's just think about it again. Oh, I see what's happening. Right, until now we said that in Mos Stumin, you could use the entire bag to buy Ola. But now we're saying, in this case, which is not most stumin, because he said Elu Chatasi, and he was implying that the balance of the money, beyond that money that he designated for the Chatos, is going to be used for other chovasi, l'shar nezirosa, meaning for both an ola and a shlomim. So he can't use the entire bag of the leftover mos for a carbon ola, because within this mixture he also has a carbon shlomim that he has to bring when he completes his naziris. So in this case, let's say he dies before he bought the karbonos, his dmei chatos, the dmei chatos that are mixed in here, which he already designated as chatos, so it's not most stumin, is yelchu liyamamel. Vashar, yovi chetzio liola v'chetzio l'shlomim. Fine, we make a nice compromise. We'll use half of it to buy a carbon and half to buy shlomim. But we have to be very careful and demand that we buy two behemoths. You can't use all the money for one behemoth. Now, what was the Havamina here before this brisa? We would have thought that he could say, Kol dvei shlomim sheish b'mos elichul al be'emazu, v'chol behema dvei ola sheish b'mos elichul al be'emazu. Remember, we had that case before, where when we has a mixture of ola and shlomim, he could say, you know what? I'm going to take two behemoths, and whichever damim within this mixture belong to an ola are being used to purchase this carbon, which is now an ola, and the rest for a carbon shlomim. Oh, so basically we're reiterating what we said before, that in this case we have where he has a mixture of mos that have within it both ola and shlomim, because the dmei chatos already he threw out to the Yamamela. So he's going to split the money,
right,
after he takes out the dmei chatos and throws it into Yamamela, and half it'll designate for a behemoth for ola and half for another behemoth and shlomim. Umol in bekula. And if anyone uses any of these mos that have within it dmei ola and dmei shlomim for his own personal purposes, then he violates the Isur Me'ilah and he has to bring a carbon Me'ilah.
Right.
Now here we have a big chiddush, because the halacha is that dmei shlomim ein lehem Me'ilah. Right? There's only Me'ilah, I think, in shlomim after the Zrikas Hadam. Let's see if not bad. I was machavin to a Gemara Me'ilah. That ein Me'ilah b'shlomim kodem sheyizrak Hadam. And the same halacha applies to dmei shlomim. So what does it say, molin b'kulam? What does that mean, molin b'kulam? Oh, I understand. It means he only violates the Isur Me'ilah if and when he uses the entire bag of mos, which have within it not only dmei shlomim, which would not generate Me'ilah, but have within it dmei ola. The ein molin b'miktsasan. But let's say he only uses part of those mos, then he doesn't violate the Isur Me'ilah. See, this I don't understand. L'chor, this would be a suffix. Okay, fine, let's see. He doesn't violate the Isur Me'ilah because it's very possible that the damim that he was using for his own purposes, right, he misappropriated those damim, are the dmei shlomim, and there's no Me'ilah and dmei shlomim. So I don't understand when he says ein molin b'miktsasan, l'chor, that should be only a suffix. Right. Excuse me for one second. Tzvi, you still here? Can you? Is it possible for you to tell me where we're holding in the Rambam, in Sefer the Ramban? Excuse me, in Sefer Mitzvahs. I think you did a 4 over there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'll show you the Sefer. So that's why I teach by Bruce. groups, right? Yeah, and Hagefen. So I think we got that already, but just if you don't mind, only if you have a minute, I don't know what time you're doing that. And neither the zeros, it's like about a week or two ago. It should say Rabban Sefer Mitzvahs. I don't find it. It's definitely there. Unless I could have sent that directly to Bruce. Right, to Bruce. They can do it to Bruce or to Arthur. Yeah. Okay. Good. So again, I have to do a little more research what it means. Ein molim b'miksasan. L'chor it should be a suffix. All right. Anyway, now elu lo lasi. Let's say he designated some of the money for a korban ola, and he says hashar l'shar nezirosai. So he only designated money for his ola, and the balance of this bag of mos is a mixture of both chatos and shlomim, because the Nazir has to bring ola, chatos, and shlomim. Can he use the rest of the mos and buy two behemoths and designate that some of these mos will be of chatos and some for shlomim? It seems like that he cannot do. No, I mean, again, he cannot designate the balance of the mos exclusively for chatos or exclusively for shlomim. He's going to have to bring two behemoths, and he's going to have to designate some for chatos and some for shlomim. Okay, now he did not get a chance to buy the korbanos, and he died. Is dmei ola, the most that he was mafresh for an ola, yavi ola, that's fine. That could be used for a korban olas nedov. Umolim bahem, and if anybody uses those mos, he violates the Isur Me'ila and he's chayav a korb vashar. What do we do with the balance of the mos that were designated for both a chatos and a shlomim? When he says hashar l'shar nizirosai, yiplu l'nedava. Ooh. Now we're applying the halacha Moshe Sinai. This is really cool. I already hear what goes on over here. He designated part of the money for an ola. So now what he has is most stumin for the chatas of the shlomim. So Memela, he can activate the halacha Moshe Sinai, and despite the fact that there's a mixture of chatas in here, he could nevertheless use all these mos for korban and dava. Umol and Bekua. And there'll be Mila on all these mos. Vein Mol and Biktsasa. Right? If he only uses some of the mos, then we don't know if those are the mos for Dmei Shlomim, and there's no Me'il in Dmei Shlomim, or these are the mos for Dmei Chatos. Now, this brisa will prove and support the din of Rava. What was Rava? Rava said that only when the Dmei Chatos are mixed into the mos, then we could say Yiplu v'linedava. But in a case where what you have in the mos is only Dmei Ola and Dmei Shlomim, then you can't use the entire balance for a korban nedava, but rather you have to bring half for Ola and half for Shlomim. Okay. I'm just trying to think, what would be the Havamina before Rava? What was the Chiddush of Rava? I mean, it seems so straightforward and intuitive. He's got a mixture of Dmei Shlomim and Dmei Ola. He has to do, give due course to both Shlomim and Ola. Can't buy one korban for both.
Right.
I guess the Havamina was that since Shlomim is Bob and Adava, we're going to give him the choice. And in this mixture of Damim, he could decide whether he wants to earmark all these Damim for Shlomim or all for an Ola. Amarav Hunamarav, Lo Shanu, when do we apply the halacha Moshe Misina of Mos Stumin, Yiplu B'Nedava, Ella, Mos, only if he was Mafresh Mos. So what does it mean he was mafresh mos? He did not designate any specific animal. He just said, these are the mos, and from these mos, we're going to use them for the 3 korbanos that he's chayav, without designating any mos for any specific korban. Avol behema. What's behema? So he says over here that a behema means a par or a soir. A par or a soir? What does that have to do with Nazir? Oh, he writes in the footnote, a Nazir brings a keves or a kivsa or an ayil. So as par and a soir are not ru'im lekorbanos Nazir. And now he dies. We don't have the halach l'Moshe Sinai that the behema could go for what? For an adava. Why not? Because he wanted it for a korban nazir, but he can't bring a parasoy for a korban nazir. He came for reshes. The status of the behema here is like a case where he was mefarish that half of the money goes for a chatos. Now, why is it that if it's a par or a soyer, it's as if he designated for a chatos? What do you say? A behema tomus. Why is this meforeshes? I think what he's saying is that he has to bring 3 korbanos.
Right.
And he only designated 1 korban before he died. So that korban might be a korban chatos. Again, it can't be a chatos of a nazir, so I don't know exactly why it would be a chatos. You know what? I think we have to wait for the Gemara to explain Rav Huna. The Gemara itself is, I think, going to be perplexed by Rav Huna. Because Rav Huna seems to say, Arei Kimufuresh, as if he designated that animal as a chatos. Or maybe part of the animal is a chatos. I don't know. Oh, and another possibility is he was mafresh 3 behemos that are not ru'uyos lekorban nazir. Let's say 3 parim or 3 seirim, and then it's like kula mifurashos b'tarovos. It's like a chatos that got mixed up with an ol and a shlomim. He's got 3 behemos, and all 3 behemos have to die. And if he sells them, then the money has to go liyam hamelech. Shalon iskavla aloch l'moshe v'sinai sheyiplu l'nidova elamos o dovra omed limocher miyad b'mos aval shar dvarim holchim l'misa v'domeim holchim liyam hamelech. So the piece of the puzzle that we're missing here is, how could a person designate for korbanos nazir behemoths other than a keves, a kispa, or an ayah? Like here's a par and a soy. Omer Rav Nachman, Hodi Amre. This did of Rav Huna, that if he was mafresh behema, which is not re'uyal lekorban nazir, harei kimufureshes, and therefore it goes lemisa, lo shanu ela tmima. So he has to be mafresh an animal that has no moon. It's a tam. And now he could be makrivit for a different korban. And therefore there's some sort of a generic kedushas haguf. I'm going to run for a minute. Yeah. That's chal. And he can't sell it until it becomes a Baal Mum. Oh, so this is a Gemara in Masechet Tmura. You have to know all of Kodshim to know anything here. In Tmura Daf Yutes, it says that according to the Rabbanon, Rabbi Shimon disagrees, but according to the Rabbanon, Higdish behema ru'ya l'korban l'korban she'ena ru'ya lo. So let's say, for example, an Osham is only ba b'zachar, and he was mafresh a korban, a nekeva for a korban Osham. So you and I would have said that it's meaningless. No, chal le'a kiddush zaguf. There's some sort of generic kiddush zaguf that's chal, and the animal is kedosha. You cannot sell it until yipol b'mu. Moshe chal kiddush zaguf al behema sheikdish also l'korban she'ru'uya lo. Whereas Rabbi Shimon disagrees, and he holds hikdish nekebel yasham ein bo kiddush zaguf el kedushas damin. This sounds familiar to me. I didn't learn Tmura, but I think we saw it somewhere else. Let's just see if he tells you. Sometimes he tells you on the side where you could find this thing. No. Often I don't see it. Anyway, so what's the deal here? There's a halos kiddush saguf, but as we said before, he cannot sell it. Again, I'm going to repeat what we said before. He atzma kiddosha, vi asel lemochra ela im yipol b'mu. Avol balas mum. But if the behemoth was a balas mum, and therefore there's no kiddush saguf, so I would think now there's kedushas domim. Harei kistuma. It's like most stumin. He could sell it immediately and bring a korban with its domim, and the behemoth is considered like mos. And with regard to mos, we had the halacha of mos stumin, which is holchim linidava. So this becomes mos stumin because he has this kedush saguf. It cannot be a chatos because he was mafresh a soyer, which cannot be a chatos. But according to the Rabbanan in Tmura, there is a chalos kedush saguf, such that now we have to sell it after it becomes a balas mum. Once it's got a balas mum, then I guess it has a lower kedusha level of like kedushas domim, and now you could sell it. So what does it mean, arei kistuma? Why is this like mos stumin? Because just like in the case of mos stumin, we said we could take these mos and buy a korban dava. Here also we could take these mos and we can again only it became a balas mum. So if it became a balas mum, then there's no chalos kiddush saguf on a balas mum.
Right.
And therefore it has the status of mos stumin. So like any kiddush saguf that had a mum, you could sell it immediately because it has a mum and it becomes kedushas domim, and we can take that domim and buy a korban. And this behema is like mos. Well, why? Because again, it's not specified for any particular korban. And therefore, we can take the mos after we sell it and redesignate it for a nedav. Avol naska, Naska is a piece of silver or gold, a bar, I guess you'd call it. Lo. There's no halacha Moshe Sinai of Telech Linadav. Doesn't have the status of most stumin. But its din is like a chaticha, kilu piri shemiktsasa lechatos, v'tzorch lo licha liyam hamelech, shetov shavim hifrish sholosh chatichos, kesef ozav, is kol chaticha rei lekarban echad. Kemshol pirish leis a carbon, dinim kim b'furashos b'taroves, u'tzrichas kulam le'leches liyam hamelech. Okay, then that's where we'll stop for today.
Okay, shkoyach.
Okay, this is real heavy kudshim here.
It was heavy, yeah.
So I'll wish you a great week.
Okay, thank you. You too.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, shkoyach.
Just gonna
Take
call
care.
it. Bye-bye.